Please, sir, may I have some more?
What, Oliver? What would you like? Hot sausage and mustard?
No, and it please you, sir, I'd like it if we could have some testosterone. Occasionally some of the males around me here could have their little balls drop. And what would be really nice is if we had some adults. Just a few fucking adults. It's crazy to be a tiny little chimney sweep and surrounded by a bunch of snot-nosed people of all ages who actually are just like whining children.
God, it'd be nice to get just a little bit of fucking testosterone back up in this shit.
Books, brands, buckled bands, tricky dicky master plans, words for the herds and the flocks of the birds that never endeavor to become clever, whatever.
Hello YouTube, Oliver Perrin here for Semiagog, and tonight I want to talk about the cultural consequences of elevating adolescence as the fundamental core aspect of what we call cool to the level of an aspirational ideal for all kinds of people of all ages in all walks of life. It seems rather absurd when you just say it bluntly like that, but I'm afraid that's what we're dealing with. The essence of the progressive myth is that things always have to be changing. So like you see with teenagers, constantly seeking a novel new experience. They're always looking for some new titillating thing to satisfy their curiosity and the explosion of interest in all the new things that the world offers that we can associate with that state. And it's natural. What is not natural is when this gets extended across a culture as a aspirational ideal. So again, the essence of the progressive myth is that things always need to be changing. Therefore, there's no particular thing, the Bill of Rights, for example, that should ever be preserved the way it is. For the adolescent, this is stasis. This is stagnation. This is the antithesis of the progressive ideal. They're always looking to break some new social boundary. They're always looking to shatter some social barrier.
Just give me some fucking bacon, jalapeno mac and cheese. They're not gonna give me bacon mac and cheese.
I just denied you. You can't come in here with an open bottle of booze. Think about it. Think. Ask anybody here. Is he wrong? Walk in with an open bottle of beer.
Can I have beer in here?
No.
Why not? Why not?
Is he America? How old are you?
Why?
How old are you?
19.
Okay, so
19. That's why I'm very hungry, man. I'm getting posted somewhere. That's fine. You're gonna look like a fucking fool. Because you're a fucking fag. Your job is a fucking joke. What are you, the manager of a fucking Union Street Market of the location supervisor of
Oh shit, yeah, oh yeah, I got it.
Hold on.
Your hands behind your back.
Fuck!
Just relax.
I'm absolutely fucked.
That's it.
Fuck!
Adolescence is the time of trying to shatter foundations. The adolescent mind is neurochemically predisposed to reject what came before. It's nature, not nurture. But I hasten to add that nurture can be added to that nature, to that freebie Mother Nature gives us so that each generation, breaks and extends what has come before it. You can add nurture to that nature in the furtherance of elevating adolescence as a culturally ideal state.
How do you actually, as a teacher in a classroom, kind of promote ideas of Marxism or kind of begin to fight for those studies? I think, part of it is that, particularly at a high school level or an elementary school level, you have to be careful, because your job, they want you to stick to fairly narrow things, and that can be very frustrating. But I do think that wherever you possibly can, part of it is actually just allowing for room for critical thought in the classroom and allowing for students to think for themselves, to talk about issues wherever possible, to bring in history and radicals and people from the past and fight for that kind of thing. And I think there is space to do that, even if there's limitations on it, that we have to do to try to provide that room in our classrooms. I think radicals and socialists have a particular role to play in kind of fighting for that type of education and bring it wherever possible. But I also think that it's extremely important as a teacher for me to think that it's not just what I do in the classroom, it's about the future of my students as thinkers, as actors, etc., but it's actually what I do outside of the classroom that's even more important. It's organizing the teachers, it's organizing parents, and working together to actually fight for an entirely different kind of educational system.
But whatever flavor of liberation happens to be in fashion will forever elude them, just disappearing over the horizon. It'll always be just outside their grasp, and it'll spur them to take their fashionable, radical action. Now, that's a great worldview. It has a reason for being, and it has tremendous power for adolescence. It motivated me up into my early 30s, for crying out loud. But adults have shit to do. They recognize the value of a certain degree of consistency in social contracts and the social relations that these shape. Certain constants simply make life more manageable. Constants like freedom of speech, the freedom to defend yourself effectively, the freedom to hold unpopular opinions. So far, so good. But because of the rise of what we call cool, which is tied to rebellion, to dramatic rejection, to assaults on the status quo, we've begun to institutionalize adolescence. We encourage it. We elevate and admire its qualities as being the most authentic. But if there's nothing to balance that teenage bullshit against, you end up with millions of man babies.
This executive order was mean-spirited and un-American.
You end up with a population that mistakes acting out for bravery, that confuses screeching and whining for heroism. Nobody wants to grow up, as in ever.
Why were the female actors paid less than half of what the male actors earned last year? See, even when we do go into higher paying jobs, our wages are still cut with blades sharpened by testosterone.
I mean, for fuck's sake, you can actually see people repeating shame, shame, like the crowds of brainwashed religious fanatics do in Game of Thrones. They don't get it. The fact that screenwriters wrote this shit in to underline how dangerous mobs imposing conformity of thought are really, really repellent, nasty fucking things. And they're out there saying shame, shame, shame. Because our culture intentionally extends adolescence, there's less maturation. We're trapped in a dependent adolescent state of sulking rebellion. Meanwhile, the marketing people will talk seriously. They'll talk seriously about an all-important 18 to 49 demographic. They've recognized that the entire mass of people between the ages of 18 and 49 years of age is increasingly likely to be made up of folks that are more or less interchangeable. Can you imagine that? There being no real significant difference between an 18-year-old and a 49-year-old? And that's exactly the demographic that the Nielsen ratings are most concerned with. They can put them into one basket. Can you imagine 18-year-olds and 49-year-olds being more or less interchangeable in terms of their wishes, their desires, the things that they're dealing with, the issues that face them? An 18-year-old with, I mean, come the fuck on.
You turn me into gangster, aren't you quite the prankster? You turn me into gangster, aren't you quite the prankster? You turn me into gangster, aren't you quite the prankster? Problem is you break my lie, if we be it with a knife.
They've recognized that the entire mass of people between the ages of 18 and 49 are becoming more or less interchangeable, more or less adolescent, more or less dependent, and more or less incapable of cold, rational thought. So how the hell did we get to the point where 18-year-olds and 49-year-olds are in many respects entirely interchangeable? It boggles the fucking mind. Well, the left made an investment in owning cool a long time ago, and their patient efforts have paid off. Hopefully Milo and other people coming up like him will help people on the right to take ownership of cool again. But however that goes in the future, I again want to say the left are the ones who, prior to the rise of Gen Z, that's going on right now, they're the ones that laid sole claim to cool. Cool is adolescence. When you claim cool by co-opting adolescence, you can then shape it. You shape adolescence, and then you market, hawk, cool to the public, and you end up being able to thereby extend adolescence as a desirable state culturally through the media, through music, through books, I don't want to say literature, and even through the interweb. This is a big thing that has to be dealt with. It's the basis for a lot of the problems with the movie industry and the music industry. They feel like they own cool. I mean, when's the last time you saw right-wing cool? It appeared out of nowhere with people like Milo. I mean, Ann Coulter, lover, hater, doesn't matter. Ann Coulter's not cool. I mean, she is now, but only after the arrival of figures like Milo Yiannopoulos, or you could say folks like Gavin McInnes, right, who are trying to literally make this sort of new right, the new punk rock. And he breaks out his old, punk rock clothing from back in the day and wears it on his show. There's some of that. But for the most part, the left still owns cool. Again, it's changing. But that aspect, the fact that the right cannot effectively lay claim to cool, is exactly what has created many of these problems. This is exactly the lever that the left has used, as I said just a moment ago, to take control of cool and thereby to subvert adolescence and package it and market a rinsed out, nasty fucking version of adolescence to everyone of all ages. So that's why progressivism has become so popular. The social justice warriors are out there imagining a world that's always going to be somewhere other than here. Nothing will ever be good enough. You'll never have being. You'll always have becoming. And I don't know, philosophically, from the perspective of ontology, I'll tip my hat to becoming over being any day. But here, culturally, where you need fixed points of reference, emphasizing becoming over being has its dangers. I'm not the only one. Other people like me recognize the value of fixed points of orientation, culturally speaking, in terms of values, in terms of what behavior is acceptable and what is not. We recognize the need for certain stable features. Without fixed points of orientation, how can we live together in anything like harmony? Seriously. Progressives insist that we constantly need to update things. For them, the future is paramount. The past is always just a cesspool of injustice that has to be combated in the present in the name of a future liberation that never fucking arrives. Nothing's ever good enough. Certainly not the present. That's why I like to call progressives the pushers of limits. And I don't mean pushers of limits like pushing the envelope. I mean pushers like drug pushers. They're constantly pushing limits. In the name of this imagined future that never arrives, they constrain our activities and behavior in the present. And as they do it, I can hear the whining adolescent voice going, "That's not fair. That's not fair. You can't do that. You shouldn't be allowed to do that because that's not fair." And under cover of this kind of nonsense, they try to dismantle all the valuable things that we have built up over centuries, or millennia in some cases, literally. To me, this is a heap of horseshit. I prefer to seek points of orientation that are timeless. I try to navigate based on fundamental features of human experience that never change. Otherwise, if I join the herd that is chasing this constantly moving target, it ends up being like a cyclical Chinese fire drill. It's a real fucking drag and a waste of time. And let me tell you something, when you get a bit older, you become much more sensitive to people fucking wasting your time. Because right now you feel like you have an endless amount of time. Oh, young people. But believe me, as you get older, you'll hear the limits to the time you have begin to scratch rather softly at the door. in a very disconcerting way. But I want to share with you an anecdote that is sort of related to what we're discussing here. If nothing else, it provides some context for what I've just covered. It's about a lesson I learned, and the realization that one of the big things that's different between adolescents and adults is that adults have learned that there are people in the world who will say what you want to hear, who will nod their head in agreement with you, who will genuflect before whatever sacred assumption you share with them. But they'll fuck you just the same. Adults realize that the world is not the fairy tale our growing population of naive babies imagines it is. When I was living in Turkey, in Istanbul, I had a good friend. He was a devout Muslim, but he was always there for me. He was a very, very good guy. He helped me a lot when I was living there with him. Anyway, we were hanging out one night talking, and I asked him a question. It was a question I had wanted to ask him for a long time. I asked, why is it that many Turks are always trying to get over on me? When I go to the market on Sundays for vegetables, why do they wait until I'm not looking and then fill the bag mostly with rotten tomatoes and then throw a couple of ripe ones on top to cover it? And I only discover it when I get home. When I'm buying antiques and I ask for the price, why is it that when I come back they always jack it up later? And while we're on the subject of buying shit, why is it that nothing in this goddamn country has a price tag on it? I'm so sick of having to go through haggling, you know? This is what I was telling him. You know, there's a process of haggling for every single thing that you want to buy, which means it's always a drag. Someone is always trying to get over on you. I mean, unless you've lived in a country where price tags are not en vogue, you have never really experienced the pain of the old world bazaar mentality, as in Grand Bazaar. The idea of constant haggling at all times. The idea that it's a game where you're always trying to get over on everyone. How come nothing in this country has a price tag on it? I was so sick of having to go through the haggling process for everything, knowing that if I don't, because if you just say, fuck it, I'll just, I'll buy it for whatever price they're asking, you get ripped off every time. So I asked him, why are they always trying to scam everyone? Why are they so deceptive and hungry? Why are they always behaving like starving fucking wolves? In reply, he said, Abi, the way we look at it, if you let us get away with it, you deserve it. I lived in Istanbul for a total of 6 years. I had a lot of friends come to visit, and I encouraged them to do so because I really love the country and I had a great time there, back before Erdogan. But because I understood how things were done there, because I knew how eager many Turks were to exploit tourists, I was always very careful. I had to be like a sheepdog taking care of my friends. They did not understand what was going on around them. I'm serious. Every time an American came to visit me in Turkey, I was like, oh fuck, man. I'm going to have to just take care of this person so they don't get ripped off at every turn. Time after time, I had to tell them to stop acting like they were wandering around in a California shopping mall. They constantly did stupid shit, drawing attention to themselves. It was like they were wandering around in Disneyland. I couldn't believe it. And unless you've lived in a foreign country for a long time and spoken the language there, you have no idea what English sounds like to other people. It stands out like a siren call. You have no idea how stupid English can sound. Oh my God, you hear it over the sounds of the native language being spoken. You hear this. I swear to God, it's just like the fucking teacher character in Charlie Brown. It's this ululating, nasal, kind of whiny, naive, babyish sound. I love my language. I love English. It's fantastic. But I'm telling you, when you live abroad and you hear English after not having heard it for a long time, I've got lots of viewers in Eastern Europe, lots of viewers in Europe. I'm sure many of them have experienced the same thing. There are few things that sound as stupid as an American speaking with the word meaning gone. You just hear this nasty sound. Anyway, I'm talking too much about it. The point is that it was like a dog whistle for lots of people who wanted to rip folks off. They had these gypsy kids who would walk around with their shoe shine kit, and they would always drop their shoe shine brush on the ground because it would make this big clack. So I saw it over and over again. I mean, over and over again. I'm walking down the street and I've got some Americans with me, and I'm like, could you guys not talk at an incredibly high volume that attracts every fucking vulture in this place to come and ask us if we want to have a cup of tea? Hello, yes, please, my friend. Would you like to see my carpets? Right? And yet they did it every time. And so the shoe shine boy would end up walking in front of us, and suddenly he'd accidentally drop his shoe shine brush, and it would fall on the ground with a big clack. And then everyone would run forward to give it to the little boy, and then the little boy would begin to shine their shoes whether they wanted it or not, and presto, they're in the quicksand of, you know, an American getting taken advantage of. Now, again, I say, I loved living in Turkey. There are lots of wonderful things about it. Lots of things, believe it or not, that are better than aspects of our life here. But that wolfish hunting at all times was a real drag. So after 6 years of living in Turkey, both America and parts of Western Europe, they looked very different to me. When I came back, I was surrounded by that Disneyland feeling. I imagine it might be a little bit like what soldiers coming back from war feel like. I mean, I definitely didn't go through anything like that, but I think I got enough of a taste to understand some of how it can be hard for them to integrate when they return. I mean, imagine, I was just dealing with shoe shine boys and guys trying to haggle with you in the bazaar. And, you know, I dealt with 3 guys trying to attack me with knives once, and there was some other stuff. But for the most part, it was minor. I can't imagine what it's like when you've had your comrade in arms or your friend or just the guy you're serving next to who snores too much at night blown to pieces, and suddenly you're wearing what used to be on the inside of his body all over the outside of yours. But that's the kind of thing that never gets considered in adolescent Disneyland. And anyway, I came back, and whether or not the comparison with soldiers returning from war is apt or just, I felt like I definitely did not fit in. In fact, I felt like I was floating in a sea of naive gullibility. The things that people spent most of their time complaining about were complete non-issues. While I was gone, I learned that there was a new expression, first world problems, which means baby problems, whining adolescent baby problems. Basically, I came back to a world of whinging babies, little man boys and bitchy girls. No matter how old they happened to be, it was like they had Kool-Aid mustaches and grass stains on their knees. Now that I see the waves of migrants coming into the countries of Europe, now that I see perhaps the most privileged females ever to have existed on the face of the earth complaining about misogyny, now that I see that Black Lives Matter has basically been trying to foment civil war in the United States based on nothing more than their desire to be subsidized, now that I also see an insane media doing everything that it can to shatter any social cohesion in our country, now that I have some perspective, having lived abroad and come back to see this, I have to say it may well be that my Turkish friend was absolutely right. When it comes to progressives, so-called progressives, and the shit that they're trying to pull, if we let them get away with it, we do deserve it.
Books, brands, buckled bands, tricky dicky master plans, words for the herds and the flocks of the birds that never endeavor to become clever, whatever, but never try, never fly, and never ever, never knew why.